The royals who lived double lives. In every royal portrait there is something you never see. A second life, quiet, hidden, running parallel to the one the world admired. Royalty lived under a pressure no ordinary person could survive. Every gesture observed, every desire regulated, every mistake amplified into scandal. And when a life becomes that public, something private must be built in secret. Some monarchs created entire parallel identities. Some maintained relationships that could never exist on record. Some disappeared into hidden rooms, false names, or midnight corridors where their real selves finally breathed. And others carried two versions of themselves so perfectly that the lie became indistinguishable from the duty. This video isn't about gossip. It's about understanding why power almost always produces a double self. The tension between the life demanded by a crown and the life a human being can actually endure. Tonight, we uncover the psychological weight behind these doubled lives, how deception became a daily craft inside palaces full of eyes, and the stories of four figures who split themselves in two just to survive their era. Because when you look closely, the real story of royalty isn't on the throne, it's in the parts they hid. And one of them hid their second life so flawlessly that historians only discovered it a decade ago. George I of Britain is remembered as cold, distant, almost mechanical, but that stillness wasn't temperament. It was the shell of a man living two lives too fragile to ever meet. Before reaching the British throne, he married Sophia Dorothea of Culloa. It was political, not romantic. She wanted affection, he wanted control. When she fell into a romantic entanglement, George didn't forgive her or address the scandal. He simply removed her from existence. Sophia Dorothea spent more than 30 years locked in a castle, her name forbidden at court, her life reduced to a rumour. This erasure created the space George needed, because while his official wife lived imprisoned, he built a second domestic life with Melusine von der Schulenburg, a woman never acknowledged by crown or clergy, yet understood by everyone as the true partner in his private universe. Together, they lived what the court pretended not to see. Homes shared, routines established, journeys taken, children raised, children who existed in Hanover but not in Britain, recognized by servants but omitted from chronicles. George balanced these lives with unnerving precision. He performed kingship flawlessly while maintaining an emotional world behind sealed doors. But the psychological cost grew heavier with age. Paranoia over letters leaking, ministers scheming, or British factions weaponizing his private life. He trusted almost no one. He spoke little. He learned to survive through stillness. His double life wasn't passionate. It was cold endurance, a labyrinth designed so neither world touched the other. Yet his story wasn't the most extreme, because while George lived two marriages, another aristocrat lived two selves. One impeccable, one forbidden. 19th century court society expected women to be perfect mirrors, reflecting virtue, grace, silence. Our Duchess lived that expectation flawlessly. By day, she was immaculate, posture, speech, etiquette, composure. No one questioned her obedience. But when the court slept, another self emerged. Disguised under simple clothing and a softer voice, she slipped into bohemian salons, literary gatherings, and artistic circles where ideas breathed freely. Under a pseudonym, she wrote letters and essays far bolder than society allowed a noblewoman to express. Her mind lived in worlds forbidden to her rank. The risk was catastrophic. A single recognized gesture could destroy her. Once, a cousin paused during a salon conversation, tilting his head as if her voice reminded him of someone. Her breath froze. Both identities stood inches from collapse. But he dismissed the thought. A duchess would never be here. She withdrew more carefully after that, but she couldn't abandon her second life. It wasn't rebellion, it was survival, the only place her full self could exist. By day, she existed. By night, she lived. And if one woman hid an identity to escape social cages, another prince hid a heart he was never allowed to show. Our next figure was a young German heir raised in a dynasty where marriage was strategy, not affection. But behind the ceremonial facade, he formed a bond with the one person who treated him as human, his personal physician. Their connection grew quietly. Late-night conversations masked as medical care, walks at dawn, coded letters whose clinical language hid affection. In their world, love was the most dangerous secret of all. If discovered, the doctor faced exile or prison. The prince faced humiliation and perhaps loss of succession. So they built a structure of secrecy. Meetings disguised as health checks, letters encrypted through monotone medical phrasing, schedules manipulated to allow moments of truth. Love became freedom. Secrecy became its cage. He ruled later with a gentleness historians rarely understood, until you see the sorrow he carried after the doctor died young. He attended the funeral disguised among staff, unable to grieve openly, unable not to be there. For him, the greatest restriction of royalty wasn't duty or ritual. It was knowing he could never publicly choose the person he loved. And yet, even that wasn't the most dangerous double life. Some divided loyalty between two people. He divided loyalty between two nations. Some double lives were born out of desire, others out of identity, but his was born out of something quieter and far more dangerous, a grievance that refused to die. He was a distinguished aristocrat, the kind of man who could glide through the British court with effortless charm, polite to ministers, gracious to ambassadors, always present at the right dinners, and always careful to appear both valuable and harmless. Yet beneath this cultivated exterior lived a mind divided between two nations. Outwardly, he served the British crown with flawless composure. Privately, he was feeding its secrets to a foreign power. His family had once held influence in continental Europe, only to see it stripped away through political restructuring. The bitterness he inherited from his father was not loud or theatrical, but steady, an old wound that had shaped his worldview before he was even aware of it. So when a foreign ambassador quietly offered him what Britain never would support, restoration of status, the chance to correct a historical humiliation, he accepted without resistance. His double life didn't begin with treason, it began with the desire to reclaim something his lineage had lost. He became a master of gathering information without ever appearing to seek it. He didn't steal documents or break into offices. Instead, he listened, a minister drunk on admiration revealing more than he should, a guarded conversation overheard behind a half-open door, a diplomatic disagreement observed with the calm curiosity of someone who seemed to care only about the politics of the moment, not the consequences of repeating them elsewhere. These moments, collected discreetly and reported precisely, became intelligence of surprising value. He wore his public mask with great discipline. In the eyes of the British court, he was the model aristocrat, intelligent, loyal, eager to preserve stability across Europe. He volunteered for diplomatic missions, made himself indispensable during negotiations, even gained the trust of ministers who had no idea that every word spoken in confidence was being quietly passed on to another kingdom. His double life was so well constructed that even he, at times, seemed to forget where his true allegiance lay. These lives do not function through ideology but through emotion, through the psychological logic a person builds to justify their actions. In his mind, betraying Britain was not betrayal, it was redress. But every double life reaches a fracture point, and his came one winter night. After meeting his foreign handler in a private room above a wine cellar, a servant noticed a carriage bearing the crest of a country that had no business being in that street. It was a small detail too small for most people to care about, but in court small details grow teeth. Whispers began, nothing explicit, nothing accusatory, just the kind of murmurs that, if left unattended, could turn into something fatal. He reacted with swift precision. Within days, he dismissed several members of his staff, staged a public argument with the foreign ambassador, and performed outrage so convincingly that the court interpreted it as proof of loyalty rather than the desperation of a man covering his tracks. The ambassador was quietly recalled, the covert network dissolved, the suspicion faded, but the damage inside him remained. From then on, he lived with a constant corrosive vigilance. He slept lightly, he trusted no one. He read every conversation as potential surveillance, every pause in speech as a question he hadn't heard yet. Double lives born from secrecy are exhausting. Those built on betrayal are ruinous. He died with his secret intact, his reputation untouched, his aristocratic legacy preserved. But underneath the polished facade, he spent his final years listening for footsteps outside his door, proof that the cost of being two people is never fully paid. A double life may begin as strategy, emotion, or necessity, but it never ends without a cost. Mental fatigue came first, a constant calculation of what to reveal and what to hide. Not theatrical deception, but the exhausting impossibility of ever relaxing. Then the body suffered, nervous ailments, melancholic episodes, ancient euphemisms for the psychological damage of living unnaturally. Politically, the consequences could be explosive. Secret children, hidden loyalties, alliances destabilized by private behavior. In kingdoms built on appearances, even a quiet desire could become a threat. But the deepest cost was internal. Live as two people long enough, and the fracture becomes permanent. Some rulers lost any sense of who they were without the mask. Others withdrew into paranoia. Others simply stopped feeling anything at all. The crown didn't just demand perfection, it demanded self-erasure. And yet, none of tonight's stories compare to the final one, a ruler so overwritten by advisors that historians now believe he never existed as the man the world admired. This minor 17th century monarch seemed perfect on paper, pious, disciplined, selfless. For generations, his biography raised no questions, until archivists revisited his letters 10 years ago. 3 handwriting styles, 3 emotional tones, 3 personalities inhabiting a single crown. A portrait restored revealed a completely different man beneath, older, heavier, nothing like the idealized youth painted over him. Slowly, historians uncovered the truth. The real man was sickly, withdrawn, terrified of leadership. He barely appeared in public. He struggled with speech. Advisors found him inconvenient. So they built a better version. They dictated his letters, wrote his biography, commissioned flattering portraits, choreographed every rare appearance. After his death, the fabrication became fact, a perfect king crafted from fragments of other people's pens. He lived one life in the palace, and another in the archives. A man erased to maintain the illusion of strength, the ultimate double life. A king who existed publicly more fully than he ever existed as himself. Look closely at these stories, and one truth becomes unavoidable. The most powerful people in history were often the most divided. They lived inside expectations that would crush any ordinary life, forced to hide the parts of themselves that didn't fit the crown. Their double lives weren't indulgences. They were escape routes, quiet corridors carved through golden obligation, where the human self could breathe for a moment before returning to the performance. What remains centuries later isn't the ceremony, but the shadows, the empty spaces in their biographies, the lives they lived in silence. Because royalty didn't escape the human condition, it intensified it. It made every desire dangerous, every fear political, every secret a potential fracture in the architecture of power. So when history speaks of their double lives, it isn't speaking about scandal, it's speaking about survival, about the cost of expectation, about the quiet truth that even the people who shaped kingdoms were still trying to understand themselves. Because before they were rulers, they were human.